Now, if China had wanted to change the subject from its abuses of the Uyghur population in Xinjiang, a region in its northwest, it didn't succeed today. It kept it in the headlines first by sanctioning British MPs and others critical of China, and then by sending the chargé d'affaires, Yang Xiaoguang, sending him out to make a statement saying Beijing was not being treated fairly.
The human rights in Xinjiang cannot be defined by a few satellite images, fake reports, cobbled together by people thousands of miles away, or the performance by anti-China actors or actresses. This is unfair to 25 million people living in the region, and also unfair to all the 1.4 billion Chinese people.
That's the view from the Chinese chargé d'affaires. I don't have an ambassador at the moment. The last one has left post, so it's the chargé d'affaires who was put out today. Kerry Allen is a China analyst at BBC Monitoring, keeping across the arguments as being made overseas and by China. Kerry, take us through what his argument was there. Deconstruct the case he's making there.
Well, first of all, he talks about satellite images, and he's particularly referencing reports from Western media, including British media like the BBC in the year 2018, where a satellite image was showing within the Xinjiang region a number of camps being built, internment camps, or what China calls re-education camps. And there were accusations against China at the time that it was locking up hundreds of thousands of Muslims without trial. And China defended this and said that these were vocational schools and they combated terrorism and religious extremism. But increasingly there have been, within recent months, more and more reports from China saying that Western media and Western countries are increasingly spreading fake news. So it's referencing these, and it often uses this figure 1.4 billion, China's population, to say that the whole country is united in refuting these allegations.
All right. Now, stay there, Kerry, because as part of the press statement, a video was played out called Xinjiang is a Wonderful Land. And Mr. Yang said it featured people sharing personal experiences of people living there to portray the real Xinjiang.
People from different ethnic groups are encouraged to learn from each other's spoken and written languages. All ethnic customs and traditions are duly respected. In Xinjiang today, people from various ethnic groups live in concord, work in solidarity, and develop in harmony, bending together closely like the seeds of a pomegranate.
That's just a little bit of a video. I think there were about six minutes of that in total. Kerry, what do we know about that video?
We know it's very old. This video is it's at least been published in 2019, and several might have been years before. There are also a number of these Xinjiang is a Wonderful Land videos. There was one I was watching just yesterday which is very similar, and it emphasizes Xinjiang's development and its people being happy. Xinjiang is an extremely diverse region with a Uyghur population, Hui Muslim Chinese, Han Chinese, who are the dominant ethnic group. It wants to, this is a government propaganda video which very much wants to reinforce the idea that these people are all happy and not in fear as it sees the Western media and governments making out. And the reference to seeds of a pomegranate. So this is actually a statement that President Xi Jinping made back in 2017. He originally made it to people in Xinjiang because of how close he perceived they should be. But also a lot of people construe it to mean China as a whole, because China has 56 different ethnic groups. So the idea that everybody is united, again, this 1.4 billion population, this is the idea that, this is just how close they are, like seeds of a pomegranate.
Of course, the Chinese authorities are very critical of foreign governments like that of the UK, who don't really buy any of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So they're often talking about people who make anti-China comments, government personnel and scholars in particular. But Xinjiang media like to single out former Secretary of State for the US, Mike Pompeo, and the German scholar Adrian Zenz, particularly because of comments they've made about the Uyghur population linked to genocide, which China absolutely refutes.
All right, Kerry, thank you so much for talking us through the case as we hear it there from China. Kerry Allen from BBC Monitoring. We can talk now to Rahima Mahmood, who's the UK director of the World Uyghur Congress. Rahima, thanks for joining us. I don't know whether you've watched Xinjiang is a Wonderful Land, any of the videos we've heard referred to, but maybe tell us what you would be putting into a video if you were making one about life in Xinjiang.
Thank you very much for having me. It's painful to watch when someone like myself suffering so much and not knowing anything what happened to my own sisters and brothers for the last 4 years. And I always remember my brother when I spoke to him last, that trembling voice and asking me to leave them in God's hands. And Uyghurs inside China, in East Turkestan, or the so-called Xinjiang, is living in hell. Whether those taken into the so-called re-education camps on living at their own home, they're living in biggest prison on earth. And the foreign journalists often being followed. They cannot have any independent interview with anyone. And if people were living so happily as China claimed, why they so worried about the journalists, the reporters, the independent researchers? They banned them. So it's very painful for me to watch or to hear any such claim, because we are suffering so much as Uyghur. Just simply because we are Uyghur, we are suffering.
I understand your point very well. And what would you cite as the best evidence that your account of this is right? Because obviously the Chinese say, well, you can't just look at satellite pictures and work out what's going on the ground. And obviously it's not necessarily that easy to get in there and to report everything that you might want to do. What is the best evidence of what you're saying?
First-hand personal stories, just like last night News at 10, John Simpson's report featuring Nursiman and her entire family, her father, her mother, her brothers, the innocent people, all given lengthy prison sentence because she and her and other sister living abroad. They're all well educated, working, just an ordinary people. But there are Chinese studying, doing business all over the world. They are okay. But for Uyghurs traveling abroad, talking to their own family members abroad, they were taken and locked up in camps or prisons. And we have hundreds of thousands of testimonies available. And for example, Essex Court Chambers legal opinion, and also New Line Institute's opinion calling what is happening genocide is all based on the evidence, analyzing all the evidence, personal story, not just the satellite images or based on foreign report, is based on personal stories. The horrors that the Uyghurs, the camp survivors who was very, very brave, and they explained.
Right, but
like
your point
Saidbai is one of the camp teacher. She said, in this hell-like place, people were not even allowed to smile or cry. They faced most horrendous method of torture, physical and psychological. Women were being abused sexually. All this is well documented. No one is making up these stories.
Rahima, and you're very clearly saying you don't have to rely on satellite images to know what is going on in that place. What just very, very briefly, I know this is a big question. I mean, what would you actually like Western governments to do? I mean, Western governments are all thinking they need to engage somewhat with China on climate change and on trade. They all, to varying levels, accuse China of genocide or something close to it in Xinjiang. So what would you like them to do?
Look, China is no difference from North Korea. No difference at the moment, especially after she became chairman. And how Western government treat North Korea? China should receive the same kind of treatment. Yep. China doesn't have the honor to host 2022 Olympic. China shouldn't be given trade deals because this is a regime of terror. It's not only just for Uyghurs, Tibetans, it's own people as well.
Rahima Mahmood, thank you so much for talking to us from the World Uyghur Congress. We'll get an update with the BBC's diplomatic editor on the diplomatic row that has been playing out today in London. Rahima, thank you so much.